This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are live in the studio, and we are testing out some of the new gear that's being installed. If you've been a regular listener, you know we've been in construction on the studio for quite some time. So you can always join us on Facebook Live. We live stream over there, so you can hop on over either at Killer Innovations or, better yet, even my page, the Phil McKinney page, and follow there. You get notified when we go live with the show each week. This week, it's just me in the studio answering yet another question from one of the listeners of this show. And the topic today is about monetizing your ideas. So we spent the last 12 years of this show really talking about how do you come up with these really great ideas? How are you going to come up with things that are going to turn in and translate into the next great thing? So the challenge, though, is now you've got the idea. Now, if you work for a company, that's pretty easy to do. You can funnel it through your organization. I shouldn't say easy. You funnel it through your organization, and hopefully you can get them to take that product and turn it into something meaningful. The challenge becomes more exacerbated if you're independent. Let's say you're a consultant or a contractor or maybe even a full-time inventor. Thinking about, okay, I've got this really great idea. How do I get somebody else to commercialize it? How do I get somebody else to take my idea and run with it? Now, there are a lot of different programs and approaches and processes that you can go through in order to, take a look at what it takes in order to do this monetization. And so from that standpoint, we're going to walk through those in today's show. We are going to share with you at least my thoughts on kind of the pros and cons of all different kinds, everything from, how do you license patents to creating joint ventures to licensing your product to outright selling it. Each one of these has some unique complexities. And we're going to dedicate today's show to walking through each of these approaches and share with you, how do you take that idea and then what do you do with it? How do you commercialize it from the standpoint of turning it into value that you get? So, and that is really the ultimate objective of monetization. The monetizing an idea is really taking that idea and turning it into some form of an asset that you exchange value for. You get money or you get something that you value in return for giving that idea to somebody else. Now, the obvious one that most people think of right out of the gate is on, doing a startup. So now you've got this really great idea. Now you're going to go start a company around that idea. The key here is be realistic with yourself. We're not going to go into a lot of the startups because there's a lot of information online for that and 1,000 different approaches to how to start a company. But the one point that I do want to make here is as you think about that whole process of thinking about doing a startup is around who you're going to partner with. Very few companies start from a single individual. It's you bring maybe the expertise of coming up with the idea or the product. You're the heart and soul of that idea. But you need to, are you good at sales or do you need to find somebody that's good at sales? Are you good at something else and do you need to get somebody else to take on marketing or building the product or manufacturing or supply chain or all of the other issues? So sitting a startup, people tend to want to do the startup because they think it's easy, they think it's fast, but guess what? It's not. It is incredibly hard to do. And you need to think about how are you going to translate that and what does that really mean from the standpoint of actually getting it translated and actually getting it up and turned into a product and shipping it. So startups, first one out of the gate, we're not going to spend any more time on that. There's a lot of online resources on how to create a startup. There's a lot of consultants out there that are in this space. I want to share with you about other monetization efforts around your ideas. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is licensing your product or idea. So this is, you've got some kind of an idea and you're going to license it to somebody, and you're expecting some kind of a royalty or a percentage of sales or percentage of margin, ongoing revenue stream back to you in exchange for the value of the idea. First question you have to ask yourself is this a full product, fully conceived, fully designed, or do you have just a component that goes into another product? If you have the full product and fully conceived, it's actually easier versus having a component that goes inside somebody else's product. Component sales, very long lead times. It could take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to get somebody to take your component, put it into their product, and turn around and sell it. But if you have a full product, much easier. The key here is to have something more than just a PowerPoint. Back of a napkin, PowerPoint, that's all you've done, value is zero. People won't give you any attention. You've actually had to commit some dollars and some resources to actually prove out the idea. Prove out that the idea is actually something of value. So, what is it? Why is it important? How do you create a barrier to entry for somebody else to copy your idea? Now, in the case of licensing it, the other party does everything. They do the manufacturing, packaging, selling, marketing. You sit back and you're playing cash the checks. Now, the hardest part is determining the royalty rate. How much should you get on a per sale basis when you license an idea? Now, there is no rule of thumb here. It is all over the place, from single digits to 3-4% up to 20-25%. When you're just licensing it and the other party's doing all the work, you're not going to get much beyond 20-25%. That's very hard to do. And if you're a component, you're even going to be less than that. Let's say a product like a laptop sells for $1,000, you may get $1 out of that $1,000. And it's really they're buying the component. Now, the challenge that you have to recognize when you're licensing it is you're out of the decision-making process. You're giving it to them for expertise. They mail you a check. You're out of the decision-making process. You're not involved in the day-to-day activities around whatever the idea is. You're handing that over in exchange for the royalty rate that you're going to get back. Now, keep in mind that in these structures, the royalty rates do not last forever. They don't last forever. As your sale, your sales is directly attributed to by your third party, how much time and energy they've committed to the product or to the offering, and how much selling effort, how much advertising, how much promotion. If they start to see that your sales are trailing off, guess what? They're going to put less resources into your product, and they're going to go off and invest in some other product. So don't think that you're going to create one idea and you're going to get 30 years of royalties. Products change, people's tastes change. I've seen people with really great products that literally overnight somebody came out with something better and their royalty rate went to zero. So you have to recognize that in a licensing model, the revenue does not stay forever. Now, the hardest part in this process is your contract and agreement. How do you going to negotiate the contract and all the terms? In this case, my advice is if you've never done licensing before, do not try this on your own. Find an attorney, one that's highly recommended, that's done licensing, and work with them. They are invaluable at avoiding all the legal pitfalls, because licensing is actually more complex than just simply saying, I'm giving you this, you're going to give me this revenue back. That is not what happens. And so from that standpoint, you want really good advice, both in the form of attorneys and maybe people in your network who've done licensing deals in the past. But the contract is absolutely critical when you're going to do the licensing deal. So from that standpoint, make sure that you get really good advice if you're going to go after a licensing deal structure. Otherwise, trust me, I've lived through it. I've done it. I've done it the wrong way. It doesn't turn out good for you at the other end. Trust me on this one. It's worth the money that you're going to spend up front. So with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick it up. We're going to talk about everything from licensing patents to selling your ideas outright. So stay right there. We're talking about monetizing your ideas here on the Killer Innovations. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio, and we'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Biz Talk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are talking today about monetizing your ideas. So having an idea written in your idea notebook or on a scrap napkin or in your Evernote is great, but as I always say, ideas without execution is a hobby, and if you're a real innovator, you're not in the hobby business. It's about creating ideas that has real impact on people's lives. And so therefore, we're talking today about how do you take that idea and actually turn it into money. So in the last segment of the show, we talked about licensing your product or licensing your idea. And it needs to be more than just something on a PowerPoint or something more than just on the back of a napkin. You actually have to have built something that people are actually can see and validate, and maybe some early prototypes. It varies, but it needs to be more than just a raw idea. You've actually gone off and invested some time and money to actually prove it out. In this segment, we're going to talk about patent licensing. Now, this is probably one of the more common topics that gets brought up around ideas is, how viable is it to license patents? Now, quite honestly, licensing patents is extremely hard, particularly if you only have one patent, because in the patent world, a single patent does not offer enough protection or enough area to litigate or deliver value to somebody that you're going to license to. So first off is if you've got a single patent, you just made it 10 times harder to try to license. If you have a family of patents, then that actually turns out to be much more valuable. That is now something that somebody could acquire and actually have a defensible area from the standpoint of the overall, the patent work. And so from that standpoint, a family of patents is actually much more valuable. And so from that standpoint, then you really want to get to the finding out who would be the person that would be most interested in that patent pool. And that's hard to do. Some of the things you might be obvious. Maybe it's an Apple or Hewlett Packard or Procter & Gamble or Johnson & Johnson if it's a medical device. Some of them are fairly obvious. If it's a patent that's actually embedded into something, the value actually is less because you can't identify if someone's actually violating the patent. And that becomes where the real value comes in. So single patents, not very valuable. Families of patents around a certain area, very valuable. Patents that define something that you can easily identify as being either compliant with your patent or violating your patent is even more valuable. Now the question is how do you go license it? There's a lot of patent licensing firms out there that you can go and you can do it on contingency, you can do it on retainer, or you can pay it outright so that you get the maximum patent royalties back. But in this case, you're granting a license to an entity. to use your patents and take a license, which means you can't litigate against them. From that standpoint, many companies will take licenses, particularly if the price is reasonable, because they'd much rather take the license than litigate, because patent litigation is unbelievably expensive. So many organizations will take a license, particularly if it reads up against something that they're working on or something that they're interested in, purely from the standpoint of avoiding the litigation. So if you're asking for $50, $100, $150,000, they'll probably just say, fine, just write the check, go away. If you're asking for $10 million, you're going to court. You're going to end up in litigation. And I've got all kinds of stories around, litigation and getting sued and all the challenges of patent litigation. So from that standpoint, you want to identify who that potential player is. Now, there's actually a much better way to monetize the idea, and that is go find a patent pool. Now, patent pools are people contributing patents that all read into a certain area that then third parties license that patent pool in order to go build a product. So, for instance, MPEG, MPEG 2, MPEG 4, HEVC, these are all video encoding, audio encoding MP3s, all have patent pools around them. And so, therefore, what you do is if you've got a patent that kind of reads in that area, you have to go justify to the patent pool that you have what's called an essential patent. And if they agree that it's an essential patent, you can contribute your patent to the pool. They do all litigation. They do all licensing. You sit back. They mail you the check. You don't get into trying to sue somebody or trying to threaten them or, getting dragged into the whole, you're a patent troll conversation. If you've got really good intellectual property and it reads against something that's in the market, or there's a group that's coming together that's being pooling patents together in order to allow vendors and industries to go build product around it, get into those patent pools. It's a much higher return, a lot less stress, and it's actually easier than you think if you've got really good intellectual property that reads against that particular patent pool area. So from that standpoint, if I had my druthers and I was doing intellectual properties and creating patents, I would actually go over patent licensing first rather than maybe even selling it or licensing it to somebody. Your last choice in patents is you just sell the patents outright. There are companies out there that are just vacuuming up patents. The return on those are pretty small. It's a one-time fee. They just pay you X. You either accept it or don't accept it. And then you actually assign the patent to them. You are no longer the owner of the patent. They are the owner of the patent. So that becomes your final choice. And again, in some cases, that may be your best option. If you've got a patent and you're really not sure what to do with it, that may be your best option in order to put that forward and just sell it. Let somebody else deal with it. Get your money back that you've invested and go focus on something new. So that's really the structures for your for the patent options. So you've got, if you got a single patent, not that valuable. Family of patents, more valuable. Patents that can easily be determined if someone violating it is even higher patent. You can license it, you can put it into a patent pool, or you can sell it outright. That's basically your options in the patent licensing piece. And so from that standpoint, if you've got patents, now these are patents, not patent applications. Patent applications value is pretty small. So don't get hung up that you've got applications for patents, because there's no guarantee your patents will get issued. People buy patents, not patent applications. So with that, we're going to take another quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion on how to monetize your ideas. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio Network.
Biz Talk Radio. This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Well, welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are having a conversation this week around monetizing your ideas. You've got that idea rattling around, but you don't know what to do with it. So we talked earlier on about startups. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about that. We talked about licensing your product or your idea. We talked about licensing your patents. And next up, we're going to talk about sale outright. So you've got this idea and you just want to find a buyer to take it on. It's a product idea, more than likely, and you're just looking for someone to take it off your hands. You don't have patents, so this isn't a patent sale or a patent licensing. You've got a complete finished product that you think could be a perfect fit for a particular company to take on. Now the benefit is you get the sale, you get the money up front, deal's done. You get a single payment. Now I shouldn't say single payment. Now I've done this where I've bought products, and in some cases bought companies that had a product that I was keenly interested in. And in those cases, I could either do a one out, cash out all out up front. That tends to be a lesser amount than if we had a phased payout or what we call an earn out. So you think this product is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You think you're going to sell millions of units, and the people buying it are like, I'm not so sure. So what they'll do is they'll pay you an amount based on that product achieving certain numbers. It's not a royalty, but you get it. So if it sells 1 million units, you get X. If it only sells 500,000 units, then you get Y. And so therefore, they don't have any risk at paying you a big number up front and the product being a flop. So earnouts are quite common in mergers and acquisitions. It's also quite common when a company's just going to buy a finished product from you. And the way it goes. Now, when I say finished product, I'm not talking about a product that's fully manufactured, but I'm talking about a fully conceived product, something that someone can put their hands on and that they're going to manufacture and sell. If you've got a finished product in a supply chain and you're wanting somebody just to sell it through their channel, that's a wholesale model. That's something completely different because you still own the idea. The whole key is how do you monetize your idea. So in this case, you've got a finished product and you just want to sell it. You just want somebody else to take it on, they take support, and it's a one-time fee back to you. You don't get ongoing royalties. You hand it over, they own it, you're out, you got your money, you're off to Tahiti for a long weekend. The hardest part in selling a product outright, and to be quite honest, it's the same challenge when licensing or trying to sell patents, is how do you determine value? What's the value around this particular idea? What is it that allows you to quantify? Now, if you're going to sell the product, this is where you should be going out and validating the market. So when you're going in and you're going to pitch somebody and say, hey, I got this really great product, I think it's a perfect fit for your company, then the question comes down to is, okay, well, how big is the market? You should be able to answer that. What is a customer willing to pay for that? You should be able to answer that. Who are the competitors in this market? You should be able to answer that. What's the differentiator? Why is your product better than everything else in the market? You should be able to answer that. You need to be able to go through and answer the questions to a company that's going to buy that product. Now, here's a little insight on this. These products that you're trying to sell, trying to create, the best approach to take is don't go to the company when you've got the product all done. Go to the company early in the process and convince them to work with you on the product. So you kind of bring them along. Maybe not very early in the product idea, but at some point when you've got the product idea well worked out, then what you want to do is bring them along. You want to bring them along such that they can kind of see it going through the process. They can get their heads wrapped around it. They can do their own market analysis to make sure it's ready. You get a commitment that if it meets certain criteria that they'll buy it from you. Because if you wait until the product's all done, they may say, hey, I like it, but it needs this little feature, or I don't like it being in blue, I want it in red, whatever it might be. So if you're going to think about creating a product, you've got this idea for this finished product, and you're looking to take it to a company where they would just buy it from you and take it out and put it into the marketplace, then what I would suggest you do is bring them in earlier in the process. Let them go through that whole process with you. So that actually softens the surprise effect. Like, hey, I got this finished product, just take it as is. And then they're like, no, but you need to go tweak this, tweak that, do this, change that, when you've already worked through all those issues. So that's just my recommendation. It's worked very well for me on both the side where I was creating a product and getting somebody else to buy it from me, and on the flip side, being on the buying side where somebody came in with a really great, quote, finished product and wanting to bring it in. I've also bought products that have been finished and then spent another 18 months changing the product so it better fit. And had they done that work up front, I would have paid more for that idea than what I did because of the amount of time and the amount of energy that I had to commit to getting that product to work inside the product family that we were going to put that into. So again, selling it outright, you get your money up front, you're done, you're out, there's no ongoing royalties. The hard part is determining the value. If I'm buying, I'm going to try to buy it as cheap as I can. You want it as high as you can get for it. One way to do that is do an earnout where you negotiate that, hey, I think this thing's going to deliver this much value to you. So if it does, you pay me X for the product. If it delivers more, give me Y. If it's less, I'll take less. So it kind of takes the guesswork on the upfront piece. You still got just a lot of negotiation. In this case, this is kind of like the licensing deals that I talked about up front, which is get good legal advice. This is not something you're going to do at your kitchen table or buy a few books and online and read up on how to do a licensing deal or how to do an outright sale. You want really good legal advice. People who've been around the block. Find a coach, find a mentor who's done it before, who can advise you through the process and the pitfalls to look out for. Because look, I've done it. I probably stepped in every pitfall. I've done it every possible wrong way you could do it, and I've been very successful at doing it the right way. So go find a really good attorney. Go find somebody in your local network of contacts who's gone through and who's done it. Because let me tell you, it'll save you a lot of heartache, and a lot of money, and a lot of frustration through this whole process. The key, though, is how do you find who's going to buy the product? And how do you get introduced to them? And this actually applies to pretty much everything, from the licensing deal to the patent deals. How do you go find the company, and how do you get introduced to them? Well, one is if you're building a product in a certain market, I would really hope that you know people in that market who would be the best people to either license it or buy it from you or license the patents. So you already know the space. Now the question is how do you get introduced to the right people? Now, this is where the power of LinkedIn comes in. Through LinkedIn, you can pretty much find anybody and everybody inside the organization, in any organization. The key here is be careful of doing cold emails that look like spam. Don't send out a blanket email that says, dear sir, blah, 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 blah. Personalize it, understand their need, tailor the email to each person you're reaching out to. This isn't a blast of sending out 500 emails. It's finding the 5 organizations that you think are absolutely the best fit and going after them and being very targeted in the process. So from that standpoint, don't do the blast emails because you'll get chucked into the trash right off the bat. And you don't want to do that. So, but particularly if you got somebody in your network, get somebody to make an introduction on your behalf. Much better than even sending a cold email. Get introduced. Get a warm introduction to the right person. because that will save you months, if not years of efforts of trying to build a relationship. The other piece here is plan on all of these activities taking a really, really long time. So we're going to wrap up on the talking about selling your ideas outright. Hopefully that was helpful. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about joint ventures and how you can think about creating JVs that will in turn allow you to create value. So stay right there. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalk Radio.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We're talking today about monetizing your idea. You've got great ideas. You've been working on that, particularly if you're listening to this show. So you probably have an idea notebook. If you're like me, I've got my Moleskine. I tend to want to write on paper for some reason. Or you've got it in Evernote, or somehow you're tracking all your ideas, and now you're sitting back going, great, what do I do with this? How do I translate it in? So the topic we've been talking through this entire show, and we're up to the point now talking about joint ventures. And what do I mean by a joint venture? A JV is where two companies, two entities come together, and they actually create a third company that each of the two own. It could be two companies. It could be an inventor and another company. They go create a JV. So the JV is you create literally a third entity. The ideas and all of its assets are contributed to that third company, and that third company is then tasked with commercializing it, selling it, supporting it, maintaining it, and driving maximum revenue off of that product or off of that idea. Now, the key with JVs, and I've actually set up a few JVs and I've worked in JVs, is making sure that you have a clear, very clear understanding right up front as to who does what, who owns, the future products, who owns manufacturing. Now, if you truly are setting up a third company and that third company is going to have staff and all those kinds of things, that's pretty easy. Sometimes you create a JV, which is just simply the legal entity that owns the product or owns the idea. The two parties that created the JV, or 3, 4, 5 parties that created the JV, are each going to do a certain amount of work on behalf of the JV, like selling, supply chain, manufacturing, support operations, IT, finance, all of the things you need in order to set up a third entity. And so making sure you understand who does what right up front, who owns each piece of those, and how do you denote who's doing it well and who's falling behind, who's not contributing their value to the JV. And you want to make sure you have that up front. Most importantly, if it's your idea and you're thinking about a JV, the question I have for you is, how involved do you want to be in this process? Now, sometimes inventors want a JV because they want to be able to keep their fingers in it. But you need to honestly ask yourself, is your participation because you feel like you've got a contribution to make? Or does your participation in the JV just because you want to meddle and be a total pain? Or do you want to be in the JV simply to be a hammer on the other participants in the JV to make sure they deliver? If you've got to think about participating in a JV in such a way because you want to meddle or you want to be the hammer to keep everybody else honest, then the odds are the partner you're partnering with is not one you want to be with. You need to be comfortable in a JV. You got to think of going into a JV as like going into being married, right? You have to have implicit trust with the other parties. If you don't have implicit trust with them right out of the gate, and you're constantly doing the check and double check, the JV will not be successful. Just write it off. You're done. Go off and do something else. So make sure you do the upfront. Make sure it's somebody that you're going to want to get in partnership with, get in bed with. Make sure everybody understands what the expectation is on both sides, and then go into it. But go into it fully committed. Don't think that you can sit back and just hammer. So now let's back up. Let's quickly go through everything we talked about in this show. It's kind of a summary. And keep in mind, as always, this information is available over at killerinnovations.com as part of the show notes. So you definitely want to hop over there and check out the show notes and any links we talked about here in the show. So first up, we talked about doing a startup. Lots of other places, sites that you can go to get startup information and get startup how-tos. First thing we talked about really seriously was licensing your product or licensing your idea. You need to have more than just what's on paper. Second, we talk about licensing patents. Patents licensing is very, very hard, particularly if you only have one patent. You need to have a family of issued patents, and that's important. It needs to be a family of issued patents. Third is selling the idea outright, getting them, selling it and just sitting back and collecting your money. And then the joint venture. You're going to go into partnership either with other individuals or other companies, or you've got a company and two companies are coming together around your idea and create a third company that's just dedicated to that. Make sure that in the case of a JV, it's like getting married. Make sure you are truly committed and truly understand what the obligations are, and therefore you go into it. So again, do a startup, licensing your product, licensing your patents, selling the idea outright, and then potentially structuring a JV. So I hope you found today's show informative on how to monetize your ideas. We may actually do some more details around each one of those. So let me know if you'd like more details around any one of these in particular. We may do an upfront show. Most recently, we've been doing a lot of shows tied off of listener questions. So if you got a question, just send them to me as an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. So that's phil@killerinnovations.com. Comes directly to me. There's no staff. There's no somebody filtering it. Comes right to my mailbox. And we go through those, and I'll pick some that may be coming up in an upcoming show. So with that, appreciate you guys taking the time out to join and listen in, whether you listen to the show live or you listen to this on the podcast. Appreciate that. The one favor I would ask is if you can hop over to iTunes, give us a review, rate the show, and then give us a comment back. Let us know what you think of the show. Also, hop over onto the show notes over to killerinnovations.com and check out and leave comments if you've got additional thoughts or comments on today's show. Also, don't forget the blog is over at philmckinney.com. I write weekly on the topic of innovation management. And then don't forget, you can hop over to beyondtheobvious.com, which is the book site, and check that out also. So with that, we're going to wrap up this week. First test show in the new, at least partially done, new studio with the new cameras. Hope you liked it. And stay tuned. We'll be back next week live here at Killer Innovations. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. Biz Talk Radio.
Autism. 1 out of every 68 children in America are impacted across every race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic group. If you aren't directly affected, someone you know is. Today's world doesn't support those on the autism spectrum. It needs hacking for us to truly welcome those who think and create differently than ourselves. We're hacking autism. a nonprofit charity with a mission to hack therapy, technologies, and career opportunities that improve the personal and professional lives of people on the autism spectrum. We believe that everyone can play a role in supporting those on the autism spectrum so that they can show their unique talents and abilities in this fast-paced world. You aren't powerless in this fight. Use your gifts and talents to make a positive impact. Join us in making a difference. Go to hackingautism.org to learn more.
Carpenters have their hammers and saws, chefs have their outfitted kitchens, and musicians have their instruments. A craftsman's ability to do their job is dependent on having the right tools. So where does an innovator, someone who takes an idea and makes it real, find the right tools to do their job? Outfit your innovator's garage by visiting innovation.tools. Innovation.tools is an online store created by innovators for innovators. It's where you will find tested and proven tools to help you create that next great product or service. These tools include books, audio training, video training, brainstorming how-tos, and much, much more. And for a limited time, listeners of Killer Innovations will get 25% off on your first order by using the discount code RADIO at checkout. And 100% of our profits from your purchases will be donated to charity. So go to innovation.tools and create that next great innovation.
Rwanda is a shining example of how the global community can come together and rebuild a country after a devastating genocide. But there is still more that needs to be done. In the rural villages, students are crowded into schools with no electricity, no running water, no internet access, and limited sanitation. Will these kids be ready to continue the rebuilding of Rwanda, or will they be dependent upon others? Through education and employment, boys and girls have an equally promising future that can transform their struggling communities. For $20 a month, a child can be educated and a community strengthened. By supporting Pioneer Education Africa, a 501c3 charity, you partner with others to provide education that will prepare a generation to take on the task of self-reliance. 100% of the proceeds received go directly to the education of the children. Visit pioneereducationafrica.com to find out more.